but mine mainly the Comanche Nation. And so that's what I'll talk about. So we used to be part of the Shoshone. Well, first of all, let me ask you this: how many people can complete this poem? In 1492,
It was Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
that's right. And that's the year that my people found out what happens when you don't protect your borders. Um, you see, we should have built that damn wall. Anyway, we uh, we originally were part of the Shoshone Nation in the northwestern part of the United States, in Washington and Oregon area. And back in the 1600s or so, there was an argument. Most tribes are divided into different bands, and one band said that they'd killed a bear, and another one said they didn't, and there was a big dispute. So they picked up their teepees and left and started migrating across the country and then down. And they went through Idaho and Colorado and Utah and all that, and finally ended up in Oklahoma and Texas. This is over centuries. The word Comanche is not a Comanche word. We say Numina, which means the people. Uh, but evidently, when they started migration, they were going to, and we're a warrior tribe, a warrior ethos, however that's pronounced, and going through Utah, and the Ute Nation, which for which the state of Utah is named, had a word they call Comanche, which means those that make war on us all the time. Well, hello, that's what we do. And then the Spaniards came along and changed it to Comancia, and then good old Oklahoma twang, Comanche. And so that's the word that we're stuck with. But we say Comanche too. But when we're speaking our language, we say Nama or Namana, which refers to us. So ta patomoba ta nanso kaita nanya tekwapaha piteribe sika sokoba tokoba ta St. Louis ta tisorepara. You probably had nobody speak to you in Comanche at 7 in the morning before, so we've set a precedent there. Anyway, so yeah, we're a warrior nation, and as a result, there's only about 14,000 Comanches left in the world. Um, and most live around Lawton, Oklahoma. We're down in the southwest corner, which is our tribal headquarters, and the rest of us are scattered out around the state and other places. We in the second week of July we do a Comanche homecoming, which is held in a very secret place. And if I told you where it was, you couldn't find it anyway, and you wouldn't be welcome if you did. But the Comanches are very parochial people. They really didn't get along with any other tribes, and still don't really, except the Kiowa. And when we had nothing else to do, we killed Kiowa back in the day. But we get along well with them now, and their headquarters is not too far from ours in Lawton, Oklahoma. So the main source of food for our people was the buffalo. And we use the buffalo not just for food, but for everything. We used every part of the buffalo. One of my favorite weapons is a buffalo jaw that still has the teeth in it. Um, and so as a result, we were a migratory tribe. We didn't stay in one place. Comanches weren't known for artistry, silversmiths, or things like that. We were nomads, and so when the buffalo herd moved, we picked up and moved. Um, we didn't have a written language until 1994. So what's that? 26 years ago. So we're steeped in tradition, and our powwows and different things are very very traditional. I heard somebody say they're a funeral director on here. Our funerals are very different and very traditional too, and we still do them the same way. But um, so we uh, we got along pretty well with everybody that we wanted to get along with. Uh, I'm saying a lot of negative things about the tribe, but I'm very very proud to be a member of the tribe. We when I dress, and I'll show a picture, you may have seen it. I don't know if they passed it or showed it, but there I am in my regalia. And when I do my program, people always say, where did you buy that? Well, I always go to the Walmart Indian store down there, and no, we make our own, and we usually have a theme when we make this particular outfit I just showed you is a straight dance outfit. I straight dance and gourd dance, and you'll note the colors in it. I use red, yellow, and green, which are the colors of the Vietnam campaign medal, and any veterans on here that were in Vietnam know that. And then my moccasins are made out of deer skin, and my leggings are made out of deer skin, and my drum I use elk skin, and then the thing on top of my head, if you can see that right up there, is called a porky roach because we call it a roach. Any other horse people on here, you know, when you roach a horse's mane, you cut it real short, and all the hairs are the same length, and that's what that is. And then it's a porcupine because the outer hairs that are also colored or painted are made of porcupine, the guard hairs of a porcupine, not the quill. We use the quills in making beads too. We just cut them and make little beads and color them, things like that. Most everything I'm wearing there is traditional. You can't see I'm holding an eagle feather fan in one hand and the buffalo jawbone in the other. Um, but that's the equivalent of a tuxedo. So when I wear that out, and it's like wearing a full tuxedo. On the back, I have a full otter pelt that goes down from my neck down to the floor, and it's split in half because I'm a warrior. I get to wear my military decorations and medals in there. So people, as I pass by, can see that from the back. But there's a reason for just about everything. If you'll note on my knees, you see sleigh bells there. Um, and when we dance, some people use deer hooves and they tie them all together. It makes noise. So when we dance, it's an additional noise that goes along with the drum, keeps the beat with the drum. We don't wear that when we're sneaking up on you, though. Uh, it's just for ceremonial usage. Back to our beginnings, some of the guys may be interested in this, and the women too. Back in the day, men only had four things to do, only four. They made weapons, they made war, they hunted for food, and they made babies. That was all the men did. The women did everything else. The women cleaned the game, made pemmican out of the meat, shaped the implements for tools, took care of the horses, and I'll talk about the horses in a minute. We're called the Lords of the Plains because of our mastery of the horse. Um, and when they had to move, the women packed up the teepees and took care of the children and got everything done, and then set it all up again wherever they went. Women had a hard life; they really did. But men only did those four things: made weapons, made war, hunted for food, and made babies. And then the white man came along and was going to show us a better way. Well, thank you very much. We had a pretty good deal. But anyway, yeah, it was a rough life. And so the Comanches took slaves. A lot of tribes did, but warriors would travel 300 miles sometimes one way on horseback down to Mexico or places to collect slaves to work for the women to make their job easier. Um, if you've ever watched that TV series, The Sun, spelled S-O-N, it's a great series. Unfortunately, it's over, but it was about a man that was raised by the Comanches and then later went back in the white world and became a successful oil man, but never forgot his Comanche upbringing. And I loved that series because they spoke Comanche in it too, and it was well done. There's also a book called Empire of the Summer Moon. It was a story of the Comanche people. I recommend it to anybody. It was #1 on the bestseller list for months. And Quanah Parker is our last great war chief. He died in 1911. As a result, out of respect for him, we don't call the head of our tribe a chief anymore. We call him the chairman because we recognize Quanah Parker as our last great war chief, and that title should rest with him. A lot of tribes, most tribes still have a chief, and some tribes, even in Oklahoma, have women chiefs. But we have 39 tribes and yet no reservations, and we're very happy for that. We have land that's owned by us and all, but there's no reservations where people have to live. All that. So we're called the Lords of the Plains because the mastery of the horse. A chief back in the day might own up to 1,000 head of horses, and a warrior might have 100 or 200. So where do you think we got them all? That's right. We stole them from you. Or, you know, the reason that they call us the Lords of the Plains is because we learned early how to fight from horseback, which most of the tribes did not do, nor did the U.S. cavalry. They would use horses to get to the battle, and then they would dismount and fight. But we fought from horseback, and so it's pretty remarkable. What some of these kids can do. Down every year we have a Comanche fair in the second week in September that's held down at our tribal headquarters. As I said, there's only 14,000 Comanches left, but the year before last, we had 160,000 people that came to the fair, including Tom Berenger and Johnny Depp and different people. But you can come down here and actually rent a teepee and stay in it, and they have all kinds of games and different games than you would normally see at fairs. Like we have bull riding, but we don't have bull fighters, so they'll turn out 4 or 5 bulls at a time, and it's up to you to get off and get clear. And then they'll play things like put 5 hula hoops out in the ring, and you stand in the hula hoop if you volunteer to do so, and they turn loose a Mexican fighting bull, and the last one to leave the hula hoop gets $100. It's a fun game to watch, but that's the kind of thing Comanches do. So let me stop my rambling now because of time limitations and see if I see a blank screen. Am I still on?
Yes, you're on, and everybody. I have muted people, so if you wish to ask or anything,
Oh,
just go
okay.
ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Let people. Anybody that would like to ask a question, just interrupt me because I could ramble all day, and I want to answer what you're interested in too. So, if there are any questions now on anything I've covered so far?
Yeah, I have a question. A couple of them. Number one, where do you live? And number two, what did the Trail of Tears tribes do coming? They came to Oklahoma after the Comanches were already there.
Oh yeah, we've been here for a long time.
But how many,
Yeah.
how many different tribes came as a result of the Trail of Tears?
Well, mostly they were the 5 civilized tribes, which we call the 5 civilized tribes: Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole. And they came on the Trail of Tears as far as the headwaters of the Illinois River, which is in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is where the Trail of Tears ended. And
Where in Oklahoma is that then?
it's in eastern Oklahoma, east of us, not too far from the Arkansas border. And that's by, you mentioned RILA, that's where our RILA camp is held every year in Tahlequah. We have a great RILA, about 350 students every year. But that's a good question. They're called the civilized tribes, those 5 tribes, because they had a written language, and they discovered an alphabet or made their own. Chief Sequoyah of the Cherokee tribe, they still use that alphabet and write in their history. We didn't, as I said, have a written language until 1994, so that wasn't part of it. But yeah, people always ask that about. Actually, I was asked by a guy who was doing my program in Arkansas one time, and it's, you've heard all your life, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, that's a lie. There are stupid questions. This guy asked me, he said, well, how long have you been an Indian? And I said, well, how long have you been white? And very indignantly, he said, well, all my life. And I said, oh, it must be different for you. We had to pass a test, get a secret handshake, and all that. But anyway, and then he said, well, why did you join the Comanches? Why not the Cherokee? They have all the money and everything. So you just never know. But yeah, the Trail of Tears was, of course, a bad time in the history of this nation. But they brought the people here, and then that later expanded, and we were known as the Indian Nations in Oklahoma until 1907 when we became a state. Most people in Oklahoma that are from here have some native blood in them, and they're proud to say they do now. But back in the day, it wasn't that way. My native name is Gray Wolf, Isatosa, and but my great grandfather changed it years ago because there was so much prejudice against native names. And and that's true. You find a lot of native people now named McIntosh and whatever. So, but that's the reason. There's still a lot of native names in my tribe, though, because we're so.
I had a great grandfather who did a lot of cattle buying and shipping cattle from Muskogee and I was in there, Creek County. At one time, he brought 13,000 head of cattle from Texas up there to feed, and then they were put on the rails to St. Louis.
Yeah, the Chisholm Trail runs right through Oklahoma, and not far from Lawton. You ask where I'm in Bristow, Oklahoma, which is in Creek County. I'm about 35 miles south of Tulsa. I retired in Tulsa and bought this horse ranch down here. So, but yeah, the Chisholm Trail went not too far from Lawton, and Quanah Parker, when he was the chief years ago, and Teddy Roosevelt asked him, what can we do to make him stop making war and fighting people and all, and he told him what he wanted, and we have a big had 150,000 acres with deer and elk and everything. Well, that's now the Wichita Mountain Wildlife Refuge, but it was originally our land, but they took it back. And Fort Sill Army Base is down there on what used to be our land too. And that's where Quanah Parker is buried, on Fort Sill, buried next to his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, who was white, like my mother was. So anyway, any more questions? Hello, everybody wants to go get breakfast. I feel like I'm shortchanging you by giving you a short little program, but I'm so honored to have been asked anyway. Let me leave with one comment. I mentioned the Cherokee. When I was an assistant governor, there's one of my clubs was Will Rogers in Tulsa, and Will Rogers was Cherokee, and every couple of years they'll have a fundraiser. They'll have a big deal at one of our big casinos, and they celebrate Will Rogers. And they invite his descendants, great grandchildren, grandchildren, all to come. And I was invited when I was an assistant governor, and so was the then chief of the Cherokee, Bill Don Baker. And we both arrived a little early with our wives, and we're just talking for about a half an hour. And at one point I said, I guess I was being kind of a smart guy. And it's hard for you to believe, I understand, David, but I said, I understand to be a member of your tribe, you only have to be 256. Is that true? And he said, no, we actually have no blood quantum at all. 1 drop is all it takes. And I said, well, to be a member of my tribe, you have to be at least a quarter. And he said something that changed my life in many ways. He said, yes, and your tribe is dying. And boy, it hit me right between the eyes. And he went on talking with my wife and all, and I was just sitting there thinking. And the next day I called our chairman and I told him what had transpired. And he said, well, they have their way and we have ours. And I said, no, it's not that at all. It's simple mathematics. If 2 people get married and they have children, chances are the child is not going to be on the rolls. And that's why our numbers are diminishing. There's 360,000 Cherokee and there's 14,000 of us. And he said, which you may have heard before, well, that's the way we've always done it. And that's when I close my program with Rotary clubs. That's what I usually tell that story. Because times are changing. Whoever thought a year ago we'd be meeting like this on virtual meetings? And I still don't know why I have to go to the start button to turn my computer off, but there's lots of 8 and 9-year-olds that do know how, and most of our millennials are using these different means of communication, and we better learn to keep up. Some of us old mossy backs might need to change our thinking and say, maybe we need to do things a little differently. And well, circumstances caused us to do that. And I'm not sure that this will ever leave us. Maybe we'll be communicating virtually in even more numbers the day.
Jay, I do have one question that I don't know you and I have talked a number of times. I don't know that I've ever asked you before. How did you get into Rotary? I mean, we didn't plan the segue, but just with what you said, what was it about Rotary that made you want to join, made you want to stay with it, and then keep going up the line like you've done?
Great question. I was asked 24 years ago by a guy named Tony Young, who used to be the director of one of our hospitals here, to come join him for lunch. And so I did, and it was, of course, at the Rotary Club, which now is our largest Rotary Club in our district, about 450 members. But I went to it and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. They had good speakers and a good meal and all that. And then I was invited back, and pretty soon I was a member. And then I was in practice at the time and really busy, and I pulled out of it. Later, he called me and said, are you still going? I said, no. And he said, we got a new Rotary Club out here. Like to have you come out. So I did, joined it, and became the sergeant at arms, and then moved and joined. I dropped out of Rotary for about a year, and then because I just didn't have it then. I enjoyed it, but I didn't drink the Kool-Aid yet. And then I moved here to Bristow and was invited to come and speak to them about being a recon Marine, where again I was asked a question that I'll share with you. The guy said, I always see these pictures of you guys when you're going out in those little rubber boats wearing scuba gear and you fall over backwards out of the boat. Why is that? And I said, well, because if we fell forward, we'd still be in the damn boat. But anyway, I really started getting it, and a couple of years later, I was the president, and then I was asked to be an assistant governor, and then all of a sudden, boy, the Kool-Aid hit me, and I started realizing what I've been missing all these years before. And now, man, if there's anybody that loves this any more than I do, I don't know who it is, but it's become pretty much my life right now. And as you remember, as a PDG, it will be for the next 12 months and 14 days, but who's counting? Does that answer your question?
It does. And for what it's worth, I was governor in 8-9. Todd was governor. I always have to look. Todd was governor in 10-11. And then Tom's coming up next year. So club of roughly 20 members and 2 past and 1 incoming. I think we're doing something right.
You really are. I'm the second. I'll be the second district governor out of my club. The first one was several years ago. We have 2 members in my club that are in their, well, they're both 97 now. One fought in Normandy, landed in Normandy, and the other one landed on Iwo Jima as a Marine, and they still come to club meetings whenever they can.
Jay, can you hear me?
I can. Who is it?
Okay. Al Beinke. I have a home down there in Grand Lake of the Cherokee for 23 years.
Good.
I used to attend the Rotary 6110 in Grove.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Grove's a dynamite club. For those of you who don't know, the Grove, Oklahoma is right up on Grand Lake, and my dad had a boat business on Grand Lake for a long time, so I'm very familiar with Grand Lake. But Grove has an annual lobster fest every year. And,
Right.
And they sell these phenomenal, it's just a phenomenal program. And they have auctions, live auctions, silent auctions, wine pools, everything. And they usually net an average of $120,000 every time they have that lobster fest. And the
That's
money,
a one-day deal too.
and they have a club of about 220 people in a town of about 4,000 people, and the whole town gets behind them. I mean, and the money that they make goes right back into town. It's just a great symbiotic relationship that Rotary Club has with that city. Yeah.
I attended so much down there, they wanted me to join their club.
Good. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I don't want to tie you up all morning, but boy, I sure am. I thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate this. I'm honored to have been asked, and I'm honored to be one of you, honored to be among you. You guys, you know, you're all heroes. There's people on this call, I'm sure, that pay their dues and they come to meetings and have a lunch and you never see them again. And there's people that are there that drink the Kool-Aid and volunteer to do everything. But we're all Rotarians, and that money that we give in our dues, because of that, you know what? Some kid woke up this morning and had clean water and didn't have polio and had food to eat and had a school to go through. And my goodness gracious, you just do wonders around the world. You're heroes, and I'm just so honored to be among you. I really am. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Jay. It was great to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Good to hear about our Native history and that you're alive and well.
Don't forget us. Oh, by the way, I'll end you with this one note. I don't know if you heard, there's been a lot of talk about using Native names and sports teams and things like that. I don't know if you heard, but the Washington Redskins have changed their name now because of all the hate and bigotry and prejudice associated with that name. From now on, they're just going to be called the Redskins.
On that note, yes, Tom, you've got some work to do to catch up to his jokes. I mean, yours are pathetic, but you got some work to do. So,
Paid for about 3 years now.
there you go. Mitch, it's back over to you.
All righty. Anybody got anything to wrap up for the good of the club?
Do want to remind you, next week is the evening meeting. It'll be Sylvia Whitlock, first woman in Rotary. She's the one that caused all the stink. And I say that with Mary right there. And I'm still alive for now. But I've heard her speak a number of occasions. She is unbelievably good with her story. She is very good. So that'll be 7 p.m., not 7 a.m. And other than that, I'm good.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Dave, keeping everything rolling along.
We'll talk to you next week.
Everybody